Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's UBNradio.com.
Whoa, that audience is a little anxious today.
A little.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. Where my camera? Oh, greetings and salutations, everyone. You've tuned into Dr. Judy WTF. I'm your host, Walt Lusk, and WTF stands for, especially today, What the Freud. And in studio is Dr. Judy Rosenberg, the founder of the Psychological Healing Center, which is in Sherman Oaks and Beverly Hills and over the world. And you can find us on Stitcher, iTunes, and, of course, iHeartRadio and Spreaker. I got to talk about that one.
Never
and, of course,
heard of that. You have to update me on
that's a big one.
Okay.
And we are live on Facebook on the UBN Radio Network site. So there's lots of places you can find us. And we are going. And one of the things we're going to do today is Shrink a Tune. And it's a real cheap song. It's by Cheap Trick. And our topic today is one on adoption. We're going to talk about the misconceptions and other issues regarding adoptions and maybe touch on some foster children. And this is a call-in show. And if you have been adopted, we want to hear from you. I know there's a bunch of you out there. There's over 400,000 people in foster homes alone. So our number is area code 323-843-2826. And you can get on the couch with Dr. Judy, even if you do or don't have an emotional ouch.
Well, I really, really want call-ins today.
Yes,
so
we really want to
please
hear
call
from
in.
today.
I want to hear from people who have been adopted.
Yes,
I also
very much
want to
so.
hear from people who have adopted and your experience. Many of you know that I created a mind map for healing human disconnect, and I want to go over that for those of you who are listening for the first time. I was inspired to do a mind map to shorten the process of therapy because I found that many methodologies don't really have a map. They don't have a plan. They don't have a treatment plan. They don't show the patient where we're coming from, what they have to go through, and where they're going to. So
and sometimes even the progress. I mean, are we really making any progress?
That's another thing. That another thing that I do on a constant basis is I will rate people's symptoms. So if you come into the clinic experiencing anxiety and depression, I'll take your quote emotional temperature
all the time.
Yeah, today was
all the time.
Was really it was really reinforcing for me to do that because I've been working with a woman only for about 4 sessions now, and she came in to see me because she's experiencing anxiety and close to panic attack. I don't know why. This week's all been about anxiety. And within 4 sessions, she went from a level 10.
Which is the top of the scale.
Which is, I have them rate from 10 to 10, and she went down to level 2.5.
Oh, my word.
And I was asking her what's going on, and she said that simply understanding the cause behind the anxiety helped a lot because now she doesn't feel crazy. She doesn't feel that it's her fault. She doesn't feel that she was necessarily born with it or she's genetically scarred to carry this symptom for the rest of her life. So we haven't even gotten into the bulk of the work, and already her symptomatology is down, 75%. So I want to talk about the mind map in relationship to adoption because I base a lot of my work on attachment theory.
Yes, you do.
Dr. John Bowlby, for those of you who don't know, the founder of attachment theory, Dr. John Bowlby, and he studied children who were separated from their mothers, and he and Dr. Mary Ainsworth did lots of studies with different sorts of attachment, anywhere from secure attachment to anxious attachment to avoidant attachment. And he found that if you give your babies during the first few years of life the emotional ingredients for mental health, which is breastfeeding, eye contact, skin contact, consistency, normalcy, attunement in the form of unconditional love where you put the child before the parent, then you're pretty much going to have a very securely attached child. Of course, other things mitigate this, like wars and so on. As a matter of fact, the patient that I just talked about came from a war zone, so she had a lot of PTSD that was unhealed from her
Post-traumatic
background.
stress disorder. And if you guys
Right.
remember, over a year ago, we actually had Maria, our damsel in distress, who was actually from World War II as well. And
Right,
had a lot of issues.
and last week we had Gina Ross
Gina
on
Ross, which is
FCC.
a fabulous show.
Very fabulous show.
Yeah,
And she specializes
fabulous show.
in healing trauma. So
Right, yes.
I want to talk about adoption in the context of attachment theory because there's different kinds of adoption. For example, I guess in an ideal world, the mother gives birth, the mother has closure with the baby. I'm talking about the biological mother, hands the baby over to the new family, and the new family starts the bonding process. And so, again, we're talking about mother-infant connections. So if we have a really strong starting point of mother-infant connection, then the damages of this mother-infant disconnect from the biological mother to the adoptive mother can be very much mitigated. When I say mother, I mean primary caregiver. So from that point on, you can see that attachment can go pretty well, although there are a lot of issues to be discussed, such as the parents that are adopting the child. And a lot of these parents have gone through years and years of infertility. Maybe they
Yes.
have gone through the miscarriage of a child. Maybe they've gone through the loss of a child. So what I'm getting at here is that the more emotional wounds there are around the issue, the more there's going to be the possibility of this family disconnect. Because if the mother is adopting a baby after she just lost her biological child, for example, she's still grieving. Okay, so she's still grieving.
Has a
and
little
it's gonna
hole in
be
the soul.
A little hole in the soul, you think. Okay, and so it'll be very, very difficult for her to be fully present. Now, that may not necessarily be so because, you have to think about the light. You have to think about our desire to love and be loved. You have to think about the human soul and psyche that is wired to connect. So on the other hand, that mother, that couple might be just drinking in the joy of having the baby, and this baby can be very, very reparative to their loss. So we have to look at the circumstances. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where the child has been through many, many foster homes, and then lo and behold, some couple comes along and decides that they're going to take that child in finally, and the child has had, and I've seen this in my practice, this history of many wounds of childhood, being beaten, being put down, being sexually abused, obviously being abandoned. And so guess what this child does not bring to the table?
Emotional
Okay.
attachment?
The ability to attach,
Yeah.
okay, and
Yeah.
the ability to trust, which is
I
our
was going to
first.
say that they're ready to saying, well, when are you going to pack up and kick me out again?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they have no sense of security at all, even if the parents going, no matter what,
Right.
we're your parents now.
Right. So
Yeah.
if you are planning to adopt a child that's been in a foster home situation, then please do seek counseling from people
Yes.
who specialize in this.
And one of the
yes.
things I talk about we're going to talk about is being the parents, the adoptive parents being emotionally able and ready.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, it's instant family.
Right.
I mean, you don't have 9 months to prepare. It's like,
Right.
Tuesday, the child's there and boom, instant family.
Yeah. And so in some ways, in many ways, pregnancy prepares the mother for
Sure
the
does.
baby. And if you're adopting a baby, there's no biological preparation. Your breasts are not swelling. Your tummy's not getting bigger. Your hormones are not changing. You're not getting that dopamine, serotonin attachment to the baby. So all of that stuff is missing. So, but what isn't missing is what's the most powerful healing force on the planet?
Unconditional love.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you have unconditional love, a lot of things are possible.
Yes. Yes.
So you can see the full gamut of things. And Walt, I know you've done a little bit of research on
I
this.
have.
So
Just to address adoption quickly, there's basically three major sources of adoption. First is from other countries. It's about a quarter, with the assistance of a private adoption agency. 37% is from foster care, and then 38% is from privately held, involved in the public child welfare agency. So it's split pretty evenly between the three.
Okay.
In terms of sources.
And do you have any statistics on what the average age of the adoptive
Yes, I do.
child?
Let me see
I
if
knew
can
you
find
would.
that.
Okay,
Yeah, let me see if I
thank
can
you.
find that real quick.
Okay.
I do, and you can keep chatting for a quick sec here.
Okay.
I'll find it.
So yeah, again, depending on the age of the child too, because in the first 3 years of life, that's when the attachment really develops.
Yes.
And so if the child is older than say 2, 3, and they're in the 4, 5, 6, they've already attached to whoever they've attached to, whether it's a foster parent or an aunt or a grandparent or the biological mother who has to give up her child for reasons like Child Protective Services remove the child from the home and she's too unsafe or too mentally unstable to parent the child. So it's not just a simple thing like I'm going to adopt a baby. Okay, so who is that
Is that
baby?
like going to the
What's
grocer store and just coming back with the baby in the basket?
Yeah, it matters where that baby's been,
Yes,
what that
it
baby
certainly
has
does.
been through. That child may have siblings that he or she is attached to. So if that's the case, you don't want to separate the children. So you get a feeling for how many dynamics and moving parts
Well, there
are
was even
involved
an
in
interesting
this.
dynamic. I read a story was a parents adopted two children, and there's a boy and a girl. One was black and one wasn't, and they were in junior high. And
Yeah.
one student said, "I'm so and so's brother," right? And
Right.
of course, they don't look like each other at all.
Right.
And the teacher didn't even know, and started giving the kids grief, like, "Yeah, right, sure, When in
Right.
fact, obviously, it was true, and obviously the teacher had to eat crow, but
Right.
it wasn't too kosher in the classroom.
I bet not.
No.
And so that's another thing. And
Yes.
by the way, I just want to mention this. I am dedicated in the next year to create a mind map plan for healing people who are coming from biracial backgrounds and
Yes.
need to integrate. Because that's right. White parents are adopting biracial
Yes.
or different
Yes.
races, or black parents are adopting Caucasian or Asian children. And so we need a program here to integrate because just like what you said, people assume. Okay,
Yep,
people
they sure
assume. The
do.
teacher assumes that the white brother and the black sister are not brother and sister. And so we're living in a very integrated world. So we need an integrated plan to deal with the here and now. And the way the world is moving now is toward
Yep.
a blending of the human race.
And just last one thing, all the teacher had to do was look at the names, and realize they kind of had the same last name.
Yeah, but that's
starters,
that's where the cracked lens of perception
Yes.
comes in,
And
because the teacher's looking at the kids and it, like
doesn't
say
fit.
what?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you want to learn more about the mind map, you can go to drjudywtf.com, and it's linked to the Psychological Healing Center, and there's a whole plethora of stuff. And we also have a iPhone app. The Psychological Healing Center is an app on your iPhone, so get connected in that regard as well, and you can have part of our blog, and of course excerpts from Dr. Judy's book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, which is available on Amazon in Kindle and paperback form.
And
of
which
course,
can be purchased through the app as well.
and it can be purchased through the app as
Right.
well. But as far as foster care facts, which is the most prevalent to this discussion, younger than 1 year, only 6% are adopted. 1 to 5 is 32%, which is the biggest number. 6 to 10 is 21%. 11 to 15 is 23%, and then 16 to 18 is 18%, and then the balance over 18 is only 2%.
I didn't know that that age was still
Yes.
a popular
There's a story of a
age to be
16-year-old
adopted.
she talks about the fact that she had her adoption day. And actually, there was two. There was the mother and the dad that were thrilled that they had their adoption day. And, of course, the child who was old enough, 16, to go through the process and realize, hey, these are my parents and I'm home, had her adoption day. It was hers. So it's kind of interesting. It was kind of a double thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's 1 to 5 is 32, 6 to 10 was 21, and then 11 to 15 was 23%, and then ages 16 to 18 was 18%, kind of a bell curve kind of thing. So in terms of ages,
Very
and in terms of adoption, Black was 27%, White was 41%, and Hispanic was 21%, and the rest were kind of a hodgepodge.
And I may be asking too much here, but what about special needs children?
There is an issue for special needs. About a third are special needs.
About a third.
Yeah, it's about a third from
needs.
medical perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when you talk about adoption, my father was a physician, said that the maternal instinct was very, very strong. Ability for mom specifically to be a mom. And obviously in a perfect world, you're going to have your own baby, but you know what? Mom's a mom.
So love is thicker than blood.
Yes, it certainly is, which falls under the unconditional love concept, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
and if you've been adopted, we still want to hear from you. And you
Very
can get on the
much
couch
so.
with Dr. Judy or been an adoptive parent. And our number, area code 323-843-2826. That's 323-843-2826. Or you can write us at info@drjudywtf.com and we can get back to you too.
yes. So I do want to illustrate from a mind map perspective what's going on. Is it yes?
Mind map's up.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the mind map is divided into top row, which is the wounds of childhood, the middle row, which is what the wounds of childhood do to our psyche, and the bottom row, which is what we want to morph into, which is healing and health and a regrouping of our boundaries and our mental health and so on. So if we are severely wounded in childhood, if we're neglected, if we're smothered, if we are beaten, if we're sexually abused, if we're emotionally abused, put down, those are the wounds that I'm talking about here. So you can imagine when a baby is not wanted by her biological mother and father, that baby doesn't have a lot of protection.
Big separation.
This is huge.
Yeah, it's huge separation.
Right? And sometimes that baby will end up in a foster care system, and we don't know what goes on. Some foster mothers are amazing and wonderful and lifesavers, and other foster parents are just not. So we have the whole gamut here. And so from a mind map perspective, if that child is being wounded in the process of this changing of the hands, so to speak, by the time they get to their adoptive family, they're an emotional wreck.
They are.
Okay? Yeah. And so they need to get help ASAP. It's almost like they need emergency psychological care. Some of these children may be acting out in various ways. If they've been sexually abused and they're older, they may show signs of promiscuity, and they may be filling their hole in the soul with drugs. Some of these children may be cutting themselves. So obviously these symptoms have to be attended to, and clearly some of these children are having a hard time forming a bond to the biological, the adoptive family, because they're thinking, well, why should I trust these people? They're going to get rid of me too. So they'll test them. They'll really put the fire.
Push those limits.
They'll push the limits to see, do you really love me, and how much do you really love me? And when it's a biological child, you don't usually, okay?
Different story.
Right?
A little bit different story.
It's a little bit of a different story, although we're talking about adoption. So clearly, even if it is a biological child, some parents just can't hang on and be the parent for several reasons, which leads to what that does to the human psyche of that baby child. And so if you can see that the wounds create reactions, now we're on panel 2, and then these wounds and reactions encode into the fiber of that child's self-image, core belief. What do you think, Walt, would be a core belief of a child that doesn't have
Oh my goodness.
unconditional love?
I'm not loved. I'm not worthy. Nobody wants
Absolutely.
me. I mean,
Right.
my word, their self-esteem is just way, way low.
That's right.
I've got a story here of a lady who, and some things adoptees want us to know
Okay.
about the fact that she was adopted young. And it's different now, but back then, this is just interesting.
Okay.
I was adopted as an infant during the time which adoption was still shrouded in secrecy. My birth mother kept her pregnancy hidden from her family for nearly 7 months. Her parents and my biological father parents agreed that she would be sent away to have me. She birthed me in a sterile room, frightened, with no familiar faces and no compassion for her situation. I was taken from her even before I had a chance. My real mother, biological mother, had a chance to see me. Back then, this was considered acceptable. Today we realize that the separation is traumatic for both the mother and the child, and we recognize that early experiences have a disproportionately large impact on the structure of the brain. I spent 82 days in foster care until I went home with my adoptive parents. My parents felt they were being, quote, open when they told me I was adopted, but no one helped me understand what adoption was. And we're going to talk about what's appropriate to say at appropriate ages. None of my friends were adopted, or maybe they just weren't talking about it. Adoption was a big secret. But I thought about it often, you think? I wondered if my best friend's mom might be my real mom. I wondered if that was so wrong, what was so wrong that my birth mother gave me away. Is she going to take me back? It obviously was a cause for great, huge anxiety. She went to therapy when she was 6 and didn't work out. She returned when she was in her 20s, fresh out of college, and she didn't even talk about being adopted for 2 years in therapy.
Wow.
And you know what? And then she just kept looking for someone that resembled her. And it's really hit me. A lot of adoptees, right? Because you don't look like your family, and you're looking around going, gosh, is that my mom? Could that be my mom? Could that be my brother?
Do you remember that book, Are You My Mother? It was a little
Yes,
child's book.
absolutely.
I can see why
Yes.
that was so popular,
Sure.
because we really want that familiarity
Yes.
and familiality.
And so she says, when we were young, we don't have the ability to identify our experience and anticipate our feelings. What's interesting is she eventually became a therapist. Obviously changed her life, and she's been helping adoptees work through the extreme, challenges that deal with it. So there's 10 things here. Adoptees want their adoptive parents to prepare emotionally and psychologically before they bring them home, and we've already talked about that, right? They got to do their homework before they bring the baby home,
Sure.
right? The adoptee experiences are real. In other words, no one can fix it. Their parents cannot eliminate the pain of the child's past experience. They can provide a safe place for the child, explore their current feelings, but they need a validation of their feelings. That the fact that they were adopted, kids are going to ask questions. And what's really interesting is when a kid asks a question and they're very young, parents should be very, very careful in their answer, because every word is going to be hung on by that child, which means you got to think about it, but you want to answer that question. And the best response that I found was, I can see that your question's important to you. Let me think about it, and we'll talk first thing in the morning. In other words, you want to address the question, but you want to give a specific time that you're going to follow through. Because that kid's anxious. They've asked the question. It's like, oh my, is that a good question? Is it a bad question? Am I good? Am I bad? Is it a real question? What's the answer? Believe me, there's going to be a boatload of anxiety. So address the question. Hey, I'll take it seriously. Give me a little time. I'll give you the best answer tomorrow morning. Okay? So I thought that was really a good thing that
Really
her to suggest to do in terms of children asking questions. Another one is they need help to make sense of their story. Adoptive language can be very tricky. Avoid the words like chosen or special as they're loaded. The phrase, she loved you so much she wanted you to have a better life, is near impossible for a child to understand. Instead, use like, adoption was a decision that adults make. We love you and we are a family. So again,
Very
you want
containing.
very containing, very
Right.
permanent.
Very
right?
permanent
Child has
family.
nothing to do with this, and you haven't want to impress the child, has nothing to do with the decision, and more importantly, did nothing to create the situation. Right? I mean, there's guilt and grief all over that. So, and it might be the question is the child is asked, hey, so who is your real mom? And, the answer might be my mom's home taking care of my baby brother, or I also have a birth mother. Right?
That's a good way of seeing it, because there's my patients call their birth mother their bio mom, and then there's their mom. They call their
mom.
They call mom, and bio mom is the
Right.
other term that I hear commonly used.
And then the next one, which you deal with all the time, many adoptees struggle with issues of self-worth, shame, control, and identity.
And
they test limits, and they have a false self.
And one of the things that we talk a lot about is that children always feel that it's their fault.
Yes, well, yeah.
So that egocentric stage of development, where their story, like what you were talking about, their story is, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
I'm not lovable, and that's why mommy got rid of me.
Right.
Or I'm not pretty, or I'm not cute.
I'm not wanted.
Yeah,
I mean, my mom just threw me away.
Right.
Right? And my dad. They always talk about dads are a part of the deal, too. But, obviously that's not the case. What is an infant? They're totally, they're just at anybody's mercy, right? As we've said, childhood is a hostage situation. Right?
Right.
The adoptee is forced to develop a false self because they're adopted, right? Many adoptive parents I've worked with decided their children as defiant and uncooperative, angry, testing out, and manipulative, but they're looking through life through the lens of adoption.
It's very important because it's such a huge topic. It's such a huge theme in their life that they're looking at life like what you said. They're looking for their biological mother. Are you my mom? Are you my... Oh, you kind of have the same mouth and nose that I do. You might be a relative. There's something very primitive about people wanting to be part of a bloodline.
Well, it's like they're looking through the world, looking for their lost twin. Right? In other words, it's kind of like there's an author, Billie Jean Lipton, called this "Living in the Ghost Kingdom."
Interesting.
Just kind of interesting is, again, you're looking through the whole perspective of finding some belonging, something that's similar. Next is the adoptive's desire to search is not a rejection of the adoptive parents at all. They want to know where they came from. There's a history. They want to belong. But the sad thing is that because they're fearing of hurting their adoptive parents, many wait too long if they're going to look for them.
Okay.
And until one or both the parents are dead. And that embarks a search, only discover that, of course, their both parents are gone, and then they suffer a second loss.
Yes.
The first loss of being adopted, and the second loss of not even being able to meet their real parents.
And losing all that family history.
And losing all
right,
that
so it's not just
history.
losing
It's
the mother and the father, the biological mother and the father, but there's that whole history. So who are my grandparents, and where did I come from, and what are the family issues, or even now I'm sure they have records of the blood type of the parents and the medical history of the parents, and so on
and
so
you
forth.
may have a little goofy mannerism, and you're wondering where did that come from, and you meet your parents and you find out your dad did it, right? Your biological parents.
Right.
It's like, oh man, that's where it came from.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I had a cousin, and his dad and my dad were brothers. And he got married about 5 years ago, and I went to the wedding and hung out with him for a week, and it was amazing in North Carolina. And just watching him, since I hadn't been around him since I was about 8 years old, it's like, whoa, I can see that we're very similar in how we approach things. I mean, even a couple things that we did, I thought it was kind of interesting. He did the same thing.
Yeah.
And, we just chatted about it. He goes, yeah, I've always done this. And it was funny. It was like, whoa, this is family kind of thing.
Right.
It was really interesting. And if you're adopted, it is not too late to get on the couch with Dr. Judy today at area code 323-843-2826. Now, and again, adoptees want to belong. They want to connect and feel connected. They find connection and acceptance really, really important, and that's one of the reasons why you don't think that adoptive mom specifically hasn't thought about the fact that she gave a baby up when at birth, and like, oh my gosh, what is he or she doing? Where are they? Are they in college? Are they working? Are they successful? Are they happy? Mm-hmm. Really? Mm-hmm. Adoption is hard.
On everybody.
It is hard on everyone.
Yeah.
When an infant or child is separated from his or her or birth mother, it's undeniably a traumatic event. Mm-hmm. All at once, the familiar sights, sounds, sensations are gone, and the infant is placed in a dangerous situation, dangerous that is perceived by the infant. The only part of the brain that is fully developed at birth is the brain stem that regulates the systematic nervous system that is a fight or flight or freeze response. The parapsychosympathetic ability to self-soothe isn't available, and the baby needs his or her familiar mom to act as the soothing agent to help with the self-regulation when she's not there.
So if you go to
We
panel
talk about
1 and you
attachment
see
theory.
how this plays out, then you can see that this attachment doesn't happen
Huge.
in a secure manner,
Nope.
and then it activates the amygdala, all the limbic system parts of the brain, the emotional brain, the primitive brain, and then as you can see from the mind map, of course you can't if you're listening.
You go to
but-
drjudywtf.com.
Thank you.
And of course your app on your iPhone, Psychological Healing Center.
Right. And then you could see the chaos and the defense mechanisms that build up, and then the breakdowns that occur. And the chaos is all the stuff that Walt is talking about, that, the sense of identity, who am I, the sense of it's all my fault, and the feelings about that. And then the defenses that children sometimes build around themselves is, some of them become very, very closed down, and they wall themselves in, and they don't want to believe in intimacy any longer, so they turn to promiscuity, or porn.
Could
The
be-
same,
yep.
okay, different
Yes.
forms, or drugs. And again, back to the hole in the soul. They want to have something that's available to them that they can control. You can control the drugs. You can control the porn. You can control that, but you can't control whether your mother's going to leave you or not. So
No.
now
It's sort of
they
a
go
form
to
of-
the control aspect.
Doing those abusive things
Right.
is a form of self-soothing.
That too,
Right?
It's
Hey,
a double-edged
it is
thing.
a double-edged sword. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, I need some solace here, so I'm going to smoke a joint, or I'm feeling lonely and the self-soothing, so I'll go look at porn or go shopping or something.
Or get pregnant, or do the WTF, the Freud, which is they get pregnant because their boundaries are really messed up, and then they recapitulate the whole scenario of teen pregnancy, or getting a girl pregnant, and then having to give that baby
And the whole
up for
process
adoption,
all
and then
of a sudden
it
just repeats itself.
Yeah,
Oh my Lord.
yeah. Oh my Lord, right.
Oh my Lord. This one was interesting. Events. There are 2 special events in a year that are really, really more challenging for adoptees. First, of course, is their birthday,
Right.
and second is Mother's Day.
Oh, yeah, makes
Okay?
sense. Yeah.
Mother's Day is difficult for adoptees as they might not even know why. It's Mom's Day, and they realize, hey, I've got a mom, but where's my real mom? I thought that was kind of really kind of tough. I mean, that's hard. Mother's Day can be hard because the adoptee is celebrating with his or her adoptive mom, but nobody's acknowledging or talking about the other mother.
Right. And again, the more we repress and suppress, the more we depress. So the elephant in the room is, it's Mother's Day, it's bittersweet, because on that day there was a biological mother that birthed that person. And there was an actual process there. It wasn't just like a holiday on the calendar. Something really happened there.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So there's an acknowledgement of that, but yet they're celebrating with their adoptive mom who didn't actually birth them. So, and it's not being talked about, which is the repression. And so it's that repression that makes the person sad. And I think that one of the greater interventions to make in these cases is to allow your child to talk and just say, Mom, I'm a little sad today because I'm thinking about my birth mom and where is she, and I'm thinking about how I didn't get to have her for life, and I'll never know why she gave me up, and I'll never know where she is, and whether even if I have sisters or brothers or half sisters or brothers.
And that's the thing, Mom and Dad, if you have an adoptive child and it is a birthday or Mother's Day or Father's Day, and your child is just being a little bit withdrawn, even though you're trying to put a big birthday party on and you're thrilled to death that you have this child to love and to hold, and many times the child is sung to more often, read to more often, is more involved and has more activities. You have to realize that it's the child's day as well, and sometimes they just have to process it a little more.
And by all means, if you're the parent of this adopted child, then do not assume that just because your child is sad and withdrawn that she doesn't love you and wishes that you weren't her mother. So that's another thing that happens, right? Is all these clues get misconstrued. And again, I think the most important thing to do is to talk about it and to not suppress the feelings and have these open conversations, or else they're going to be the elephant in the room. And elephants, they make a big mess.
They make a big mess, and even if it's under the carpet, it's still a mess.
Although they're very fun and very cute, they could still make a big mess.
Yeah, but you know what? Elephants never forget either.
Oh, that's right. There we go. Thank you.
Elephants never forget.
So significant to our conversation. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And then adoption is a lifelong process. Separations, relationships, and transitions may be difficult hurdles throughout the lifespan of those whose earliest experiences was separation from their birth mother. Attuned parents can help their child and adolescents navigate these events, and ideally, these experiences will be integrated along the way.
Right, and the triggers are going to be plenty, especially if the trust has been lost before they came into the family. And so if that family, let's say, leaves that child because they're going on a vacation, that abandonment can be triggered. Or if the child goes off to school and is left in a new situation, that abandonment and separation anxiety, again, can be re-triggered. But as long as you know what's going on and you don't react to it and you put it in the context of what wounded the child, then you can address it. You can address it intelligently, and you can help that child heal through all of this.
One thing that I thought was really an aha moment from one of the research I gleaned is helping the adoptive child really deal with this is if the parent makes a scrapbook of maybe here's a picture of your adopted mom, here's your being born, different things that relate specifically to them. So it says here that, was the mother artistic? Someday you'll be able to want to pass along this information to your youngster. One useful way to address all kinds of adoption questions with a life book, a scrapbook of all the information about their past. This can be a very, very helpful way for the child who's, the complicated past with multiple moves. The book can be read in more detail as the child matures. I thought that was really, really cool. Something you're not only going to give to the child. Like,
right,
hey, this is you and your history.
Right, very containing and very much in line with having that child form an identity. Because that's a problem. They don't feel that they belong, and they feel that they're not part of a family. And so that scrapbook or that diary or whatever gives that child a story, a cohesive story about where they were and where they are now, and a sense of connectivity between all of the events of their life.
So I thought that was really an interesting suggestion.
Very
it was
interesting.
very, very, very practical.
Right.
But again, the parents have to be very attuned to that early on, and make a scrapbook, or even it's just a box. Just take a little shoe box, and if there's a little something, just throw it in the box. If it's too overwhelming initially to put in a scrapbook, just put the makings of it in the box, and later you can put it together.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
I think that was kind of cool.
Yes.
I had some misconceptions, and I don't know where I put that thing. It's got to be here. Oh, where'd it go? We've got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Actually 5 minutes.
Okay. So are you looking for some information on misconceptions? Well, I think one misconception of adoption is that the child is immediately going to be a juvenile delinquent. I mean, that's just not true. I'm going to adopt a child and they're going to,
Yeah, you got a can of spray paint and all of a sudden the spray paint's all over town.
Right.
No. Adopted children are not loved as much as biological children.
That's a misconception.
That is a very huge disconnection.
Yeah.
Nearly 3 out of 4 adopted children ages 0 to 5 are read or sung to every day. In other words, it's sometimes more. They have an astounding appreciation for their adopted child. So, it's not true at all. Next is birth mothers versus, the child will hate me because I placed him up for adoption. 90% of adopted children ages 5 or older have positive feelings about their adoption. And it's a good thing. I mean, hey, I'm loved, I'm wanted, I'm chosen, I'm special, even those words are kind of loaded. But
and usually if that child is adopted into a family, that family can offer probably more, obviously, than the biological mother.
And that's
more
a
love,
big reason.
more time, more money, more resources, more health, all of the above. And the child gets that connection made of,
Yes,
wow, I'm so fortunate to be with the family that can really, really give me maybe what my biological mother or father could not give me.
Once I place my baby up for adoption, I will never see them again. Which is, again, not true, especially today. 100% of all birth mothers have the right to choose the amount of openness they want in their child's life. Today, most educated professionals encourage adoptive families to be accepting, at least in a semi-open adoption. That way, ultimately, the birth mother can have some interaction with the child in some way. 67% of private adoptions have a pre-adoption agreements in that regard. So just because you give your baby up for adoption today is a guarantee. It's not going to be like gone and they're moving to another part of the world and you're never going to see them again.
Right. The only thing that you can't do usually is take them back.
Yes, unfortunately, it's a one-way deal.
It's a big contract.
It's pretty serious. My child won't know that she's adopted. Well, a birth mother won't tell anyone that she's pregnant or even leave them. But again, we've discussed it's better to tell them sooner than later in some way, shape, or form. If you get to the point where they're in junior high, you know what? It's a whole different can of worms, and they kind of get upset that they've realized they were adopted, and it's just not
And some
pretty.
of them already know, and some of them find
suspect
out
it.
through an aunt
and
or
an
uncle or
right,
friend
and
or
it's
whatever.
like,
It's not good.
No.
Because it breaks the trust. I
yes.
mean, all this time they've been trying to build the trust, and now that could be broken by withholding information.
You talked about health. Adopted children are not as healthy as non-adopted children. 85% of adopted children are rated have excellent or good health. Okay, so health is not really an issue. And obviously it's important to find out about the adoptive family, but it can be usually determined somewhere down the road. So those are some of the misconceptions about adoption. It's all good.
And including not all adopted babies are withdrawing from fetal alcohol syndrome or some of them are. Actually, some of them are, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And that takes a whole nother set of skills and care and intervention and so on. So I'm getting the picture that there's just a world of wonderful people that are willing to and want to and have a sense themselves that they want to fill that piece of their life too. Because remember, the other end, a lot of these parents have suffered from infertility for many, many years, or have lost a child, or feel that their only child really is not going to have as well-rounded a life if they don't have a brother or sister. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes too.
There certainly is, and so
The
if you
other
want,
end of it, the parents.
there certainly is.
Right.
If you'd like some information or the notes that I glean, you can write me and us at